Are you ready for what will happen when your woman turns 40? You're not. No one is. It doesn't matter how much you love her or how well you think you know her. Something will change, and you won't be able to stop it. It arrives without warning, like a silent crack. One day she looks at you differently, and you don't know why. It's not lack of love, it's something deeper, an invisible reconfiguration. Her mind begins to rebel against time. Her reflection stops being an ally and becomes a judge. She begins to seek validation without meaning to, not from you, but from the world. From glances, gestures, likes, not out of vanity, but out of fear. Fear of not being seen, of disappearing, of becoming invisible. And you, without realizing it, become the mirror of everything that ties her down, the symbol of her routine, the witness to her perceived decline. Not because she hates you, but because her mind pushes her to feel alive again, even if it's through another skin. And when that happens, you won't understand it. You'll think everything's fine until one day you feel she's no longer there. Not physically, but emotionally. And the most unsettling part is that none of this will be your fault. It's a biological, psychological, and brutal process that very few men notice in time. But if you stay until the end, you'll understand what's really happening in her mind, the signs no one ever taught you to recognize, and, most importantly, how to protect yourself before that reconfiguration starts to destroy what you've built over the years. There's something no one tells you about that transformation. It doesn't happen all at once, but in small doses of distance. It begins with silence. A different kind of silence, heavier, colder. She used to talk to you about everything. Now she doesn't. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she's learning to speak to herself. In that process, a woman's inner world expands in a way that can be frightening. She starts to look at her life as if it weren't hers, analyzing every decision she ever made through the lens of maturity. Why did she give that up? Why did she endure so much? When did she stop being the protagonist of her own story? And those questions are emotional dynamite. While you think she's just more thoughtful, she's taking inventory of her life. And when a woman takes inventory, she weighs everything. The years invested, the dreams sacrificed, the promises broken. Not out of resentment, but survival. Because her brain starts to shift priorities, and what once fulfilled her now feels like an empty set. Love stops being a refuge and starts to feel like routine. And that's the most dangerous point, because when love becomes predictable, the mind looks for stimulation elsewhere. Not necessarily in another person, but in another sensation. The thrill of feeling desired, the adrenaline of the unknown. That's where the invisible role of the environment comes in. Social media becomes her new field of validation. She won't admit it, but every post, every photo, every reaction is a small dose of dopamine that reminds her she can still provoke. And when that feeling starts to replace what she once found at home, emotional balance begins to crumble. It's not that she wants to replace you. It's that she needs to confirm she's still alive in a world that measures worth by the attention you receive. And that poison, constant comparison, corrodes even the strongest minds. The most disturbing part is that the change isn't always visible. Sometimes it happens in details so small you overlook them. She starts sleeping on the other side of the bed, changes her perfume, laughs differently, or listens to you without really hearing you. Micro disconnections, almost imperceptible, but cumulative. And when distance becomes a habit, return no longer feels natural. She tries, yes, but something inside her says she can't go back to who she was. Here's where many men fail. They try to fix the problem with logic. But this isn't a logical problem. It's an emotional process, deeply irrational. It's not about what you give her, but what she no longer feels. You can offer security, but security doesn't feed the soul. What she seeks in that moment isn't stability, but intensity. She wants to feel something unpredictable again, something that pulls her out of the numbness of the known. And the cruelest part is, she doesn't always look for it outside. Sometimes she looks for it within, but can't find it. And when a woman can't find intensity within herself, the world becomes an invitation. Every conversation, every kind gesture, every curious glance becomes a reminder that she can still spark interest. It's not infidelity, it's reaffirmation. But that repeated reaffirmation can be the beginning of the end. Because the more she gets used to finding outside what she once found within, the harder it becomes to return. It's not that she's stopped loving you, it's that she's learning to love herself for the first time, and that lesson often claims casualties. When a woman who's spent years as a supporter, mother, companion, caretaker suddenly looks in the mirror and realizes she's vanished behind those roles, the urge to rediscover herself becomes an obsession. And that rediscovery doesn't always include the man who stood beside her. Here comes the most uncomfortable truth. You can't stop that process, but you can understand it. Most men don't lose their woman to another man. They lose her to a version of herself that had been asleep for too long. When she awakens, she seeks meaning. And if she doesn't find it with you, she'll look elsewhere. Not out of malice, but instinct. Turning 40 isn't just a number, it's a psychological portal. The body changes, yes, but so does the soul. It becomes more selective, more conscious, more demanding. And while you try to stay calm, she starts questioning everything she thought was fixed. What once was certainty now becomes doubt. What once was routine now feels like a cage. And with each passing day, the distance between the woman she was and the one emerging grows wider. And there's the paradox. You still love the woman you met, but she no longer exists. In front of you stands another person, same eyes, same voice, but a completely different mind. And if you don't learn to know her again, you'll lose her without even realizing when she started to go. Because female reconfiguration isn't seen, it's felt. And by the time you feel it, it's already too late. But there's more, something very few understand. This crisis doesn't just transform her, it can transform you if you look with a calm mind and an open heart. By the end of this, you'll see how this process, which seems like a threat, can become an opportunity. Not to control her, but to understand the psychology behind desire, fear, and rebirth. Because when a woman crosses 40, she doesn't disappear. She reinvents herself. And if you don't know how to accompany that reinvention, you'll remain trapped in the memory of who she was while she's already living another life, even if it's still under your roof. And the most disturbing part of all this is that, while you try to figure her out, she begins to feel something she doesn't know how to handle, a mix of guilt and liberation. Guilt for questioning what she built, and liberation for daring to do it. It's an inner battle between the woman she was and the one emerging. But what you don't imagine is that behind that silent struggle lies something darker, a voice whispering that time is running out. She doesn't say it aloud, but she feels it in every mirror, every birthday, every old photo on her phone. It's not vanity, it's fear, the most human and silenced fear, the fear of no longer being desired. At that point, her mind starts distorting reality, not on purpose, not consciously. She begins to see love as predictable routine and desire as a scarce resource. She starts thinking that the flutter she feels when someone looks at her, even by accident, is proof she's still alive. And that can drag her into decisions she'd never have made before. Because when a woman feels her emotional time running out, the brain switches into survival mode. And emotional survival is dangerous. It doesn't seek logic, it seeks impact. Here's what few men grasp. Seduction isn't what attracts her, it's what soothes her. It's the temporary painkiller that numbs the sense of expiration. She doesn't seek it to replace you. She seeks it because her mind needs proof she's still visible in a world obsessed with youth. It's brutal, but it's real. And social media, filters, constant comparisons, they're gasoline on that fire. Every time she sees another woman reinventing herself, every time she hears, "Your second youth starts at 40, her brain lights up. She starts believing something's slipping away, that the biological clock doesn't just count time, but limits desire. And there lies the real enemy, not you, not another man, not even age itself, but the narrative the world built about what a woman is worth once she stops being young. A cruel, invisible narrative whispering daily that her value depends on being seen, admired, desired. And the tragedy is that it sinks so deep she can't even tell whether what she feels is real desire or fear of disappearing. That's the perfect trap, confusing the need for validation with the search for freedom. You see her smile and think everything's fine. But behind that smile, there's a storm of doubt. She won't tell you. She doesn't even know how to explain it. How could she confess she feels alien to her own reflection? How could she admit she no longer knows whether she wants love or redemption? That's where many men lose control. They try to reason with a heart that no longer listens to reason. They try to hold her with promises, with words, with logic. But when a mind enters emotional mode, arguments become noise. Then comes the final disconnection, emotional. No fights, no shouting, no reproaches, just a deep tiredness. She'll speak softly, but there'll be no fire. She'll look at you tenderly, but without desire. And you'll feel something's broken, though you can't name it. You'll try to recover what was, but what was no longer exists. She's rebuilding herself from zero, and you're part of the stage she's trying to leave behind. It's cruel, yes, but inevitable if you don't act in time. The biggest mistake men make is believing stability equals love. It doesn't. Stability can mean comfort, routine, even resignation, but love needs movement, mystery. And when a woman feels she's lost that, her instinct doesn't seek rest, it seeks vertigo. Not because she doesn't love you, but because the human brain, when faced with the fear of losing attractiveness, craves an emotional surge to survive. It's pure chemistry, and that chemistry can turn even the most rational person into someone who crosses lines they never thought they would. But here's what no one tells you. If you understand this process, it can save you too. Because if you can read the signs, you can become part of her rebirth, not just her memory. A woman going through this phase doesn't want control. She wants understanding. She wants to feel seen without being judged, to know that her vulnerability doesn't make her less, but more real. If you can offer that, the bond can become stronger than ever. But if you ignore her, mock her, or treat her as if she's overreacting, you'll lose everything. Because at that moment, her mind records a simple truth. You don't understand her. And a woman who feels misunderstood looks for a place where she is. Curiously, this crisis doesn't just change her relationship with you. It changes her relationship with the world. She starts seeing her friends differently, questioning their conversations, reevaluating what society sold her as success. She realizes much of her life was spent fitting in, not being. And that realization is devastating. But it also pushes her to rebel, not against you, but against the role the world assigned her. And there's your opportunity, because when a woman rebels, She needs a witness, not a judge. If you can be that witness, if you can see that what's happening isn't betrayal, but rebirth, you can weather the storm with her. But if you take it as a personal offense, you'll trap yourself as the enemy. Because in the end, this story isn't about loss, it's about evolution. About how the fear of disappearing can become the most powerful drive to rebuild. And if you have the emotional intelligence to see it, you'll understand that what looks like a threat is actually a second chance. A chance to love differently, to connect without masks, to truly stand beside someone when the body changes but the soul still seeks meaning. The clock isn't the enemy, silence is. And if you don't learn to listen to what that silence hides, one day you'll wake up and she'll be gone, not in body, but in spirit. But if you know how to listen, if you see beyond the fear, you'll discover a truth few men ever realize. Crisis doesn't destroy. It reveals who's ready to stay when illusion collapses and truth begins. And when that truth appears, everything changes. Because you're no longer facing the woman you knew, but a version who's seen too much, felt too much, and kept even more inside. And here's what few dare to say. That new version can be more dangerous, more fascinating, and more unpredictable than ever. Because when a woman realizes she no longer needs to please, her power becomes terrifying. She no longer seeks approval. She seeks purpose. She no longer waits to be seen. She decides when to appear and when to disappear. And if you don't understand that change, you'll mistake it for coldness, when it's really emotional independence. At that point, her mind enters new territory, radical introspection. She starts remembering who she was before the world told her who to be. She mentally returns to her 20s, to dreams abandoned, promises unkept. She asks herself if her current life is a choice or a consequence. And that seemingly harmless question changes everything. Because when someone begins questioning the roots of their story, any branch can break. You can sense it in how she looks at you, in how she changes the subject when you talk about the future, and how she seems absent even when smiling. She's not thinking of another man, she's thinking of another life. One where she doesn't have to explain herself, prove she's strong, or play a role that no longer fits. And if you can't read between the lines, you'll think it's simple boredom. But what's happening inside her is far deeper. She's processing years of emotional load, expectations, sacrifices, and silences. And that process has a price. Detachment. Female detachment isn't impulsive. It's a silent, almost surgical transition. It leaves no clear signs, no warnings. One day she simply wakes up and doesn't feel the same. She doesn't hate, she doesn't love, she just is. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. But that apparent calm is the most dangerous thing, because behind that serenity lies a decision already made. When a woman shuts down emotionally, no argument can reignite her. That's when men panic, trying to save what's already gone, acting from fear, not understanding. And fear, mixed with love, destroys everything. What no one teaches you is that feminine emotions work like a spiral. The deeper they go, the more they change. And in that descent, she may discover a strength she never knew she had. She stops justifying herself, stops apologizing for feeling different. she starts prioritizing herself. And that act, which should be natural, the world calls selfishness. But it's not. It's the awakening of someone who lived for others for decades. Then something fascinating happens. While the world thinks she's in crisis, she begins to be reborn. She signs up for a class, changes her routine, cares for her body differently, reads new things, seeks silence. She no longer runs from time, she observes it. And if you look closely, you'll see something new in her presence. She no longer seeks to please, she seeks to understand. And that inner change can be the start of her freedom, or the end of your relationship. It all depends on whether you can adapt to her new emotional language. Because this isn't about keeping her, it's about evolving with her. The man who tries to keep things as they were is doomed to lose, because she no longer wants what was. She wants to discover what could be. And if you don't accompany her, she'll leave, not physically at first, but emotionally. And when someone leaves from within, the body is the last to go. Here's where many go wrong. They think mature love equals calm, but in truth, it's controlled fire. Passion doesn't die with age, it dies with indifference. If you don't reinvent how you desire her, she'll seek in imagination what she can't find in reality. Not to betray you, but to remember what it feels like to be alive. Because deep down, that's what every human being seeks, to feel alive. And when routine, responsibilities, and time extinguish that feeling, the mind begins to look for sparks where there once was fire. It could be a conversation with a stranger, a memory of youth, an unfulfilled fantasy. The source doesn't matter, the emotion does. That emotion becomes oxygen, and if she can't find it with you, she'll look for it in the air. But there's still something men can do, something almost no one tries. Stop seeing that crisis as a threat and start seeing it as a language. Reconfiguration isn't destruction, it's communication. It's her way of saying, I don't want to just survive, I want to feel. And if you can hear that message without ego, without fear, without trying to fix her, you can enter a new space where the bond isn't held by habit, but by conscious choice. Because in the end, the real question isn't why she changes, it's whether you're capable of changing with her. What comes after 40 isn't the end of a story, it's the beginning of a stage where authenticity replaces illusion. And those who don't understand that get stuck in nostalgia, trying to resurrect what once was. But those who do, those who dare to face fear head-on, discover something unexpected. That behind that crisis lies a chance for a deeper, more intense, more human connection. Because when a woman no longer needs the world's approval, she's finally ready to love without fear. And if you can be there, without demanding, without controlling, without trying to be her savior, you'll witness something few men ever do. The rebirth of a free mind, the resurgence of an identity, the awakening of a force that doesn't destroy, it transforms.